Today is Wednesday, February 6th. My name is Megan Beats of the Basement Team, and I'm joined today by Jennifer Kreingold, Mihua Steger, and Lyndon LaRouche. Today what we're going to do is something a little bit unexpected.
The first thing is musicians do not, and music is not played in abstract. It's played by two factors. First of all, you have the performers, and then you have a relationship of the performers to the audience. And the performers are part of the audience. That's the point. Now, what happens, the point is this, is that it deals with a piece of heretofore really not understood principles. That the principle is, what do we mean by classical composition? This means public speaking, it means dramas, it means all kinds of these things which are outside the actual sense certainty experiences. And so therefore what happens is you are become under the rule of certain rules which are the principles of classical composition, which are universal principles of classical artistic composition. What's needed? Well, you have people talking. Why do you not like to hear people talking? Because they're behaving stupidly. Because they are not really being human. The same thing is true of classical drama, stage drama. On the stage, the performance, the design of the performance, of the composition, and the delivery of the composition have the same function as music. So all these things which we recognize as classical artistic composition, which also have variants, which they give different expressions to. But there's a core definition. This defines you have to look at two things. One thing, what I've just discussed. The other thing is the relationship of man to his universe. And therefore, there are certain forms which we adduce as classical artistic compositions and its performance. This brings the audience, the population, and the performers into a certain special kind of accord. That they agree to adhere to certain principles of composition. And the performers and the audience agree. And it's the bringing of the audience and the performers and so forth and the composition itself into an accord, which is the principle of the human mind. So therefore, when we're not doing classical composition as a method, we are actually undermining the human mind. For example, Franz Liszt typifies the destruction of the human mind. He does, because he destroys the very thing on which the whole thing is based on. Classical drama, as opposed to other kinds of drama, the same thing. So we have these things we call artistic composition and performance. These things define what is really the civilized form of the human mind. And that's what the point is. So therefore, it's what you experience in the relationship between the performance, the performer, and the audience. These three are essential elements. And it's that relationship that defines the whole meaning of classical musical composition and its performance. Because it's the accord among the 3 points: the performer, the music, and the audience, and the interaction among them. Therefore, as when you go on stage in a great classical drama, you take the typical classical drama, take Shakespeare's performances, his performances in modern times. It's garbage. It's not Shakespeare's fault. It's garbage. And the composition of the idea, composition of drama, like the composition of music, what we get essentially with Liszt, you begin to get garbage, because it's dead. Liszt is a dead man walking on the keyboard. It's essentially, Wagner is, I don't know, I guess he's having diarrhea of certain kind. But then you find the same thing in all areas of life. And this is not merely entertainment. This is not merely artistic composition. But the element of artistic composition as a mode of expression creates a kind of discipline. And that discipline is in accord with what the principles of humanity must be. That's in short. But I've in this third chapter of this thing, I've gone further on that point in detailing it. But it's a longer thing to recite at this point. But that's exactly what the point is. It's a misunderstanding, a complete misunderstanding of what artistic composition is. It's a very special thing. There are two areas which man functions. One is the ordinary, sort of arbitrary manner, and the other is really the more sophisticated, deeper manner. And it's that distinction which is extremely important in this. And what we have is, when you don't have classical composition, but you must lift the audience and the performers alike. They cannot be separated. They have to be together. They have to be in accord. Yeah. Even if they seem dissonant, they have to be in accord. Yeah. And this accord is what defines people as really being human. In other words, if you're dissonant in the arbitrary fashion, you are distancing yourself from humanity, because what you're saying or what you're doing has no meaning for the purpose of humanity, which is what the meaning of classical artistic composition is. And therefore we have discovered from experience what those are. And for example, a poor performance of Shakespeare will have the same effect as Liszt. Yep. It's actually junk. It's total junk. And because there is a certain part of our experience is given to, shall we say, nature. But there's a higher aspect which we associate with the performance of classical artistic composition in all its expressions, which actually belongs to man. It has a relationship to mankind, which other things don't. Ordinary things don't. So it's the flight into a refuge of classical artistic composition, which transforms the ugliness of daily life into a meaningful experience. And that's what it's for. If you don't have classical drama, for example, as Shakespeare has to be performed as classical drama, you must transport the audience out of their own skins into the skins of others, as Shakespeare himself explains a number of times. Right? It's the same principle. We need to have a conscience, a special kind of conscience, which includes these functions of classical artistic composition in drama, in poetry, as well as in music. They all are required. They have to be in consonance. How can you set a poem to music? That has to be in accord. And where does the chord lie? It lies in the principle which underrates the whole process. And that's the whole purpose. If we don't have classical culture, you find mankind moves toward bestiality. It is the classical culture that pulls man away from the tendency to draw into that. And so you have a higher concept of the mind. The mind has two levels. One level is this, what corresponds to classical artistic composition. And the other is the ordinary street stuff all the time. And that's exactly what this is all about. You have to have that principle inherent in everything you do. This is with the principle of beauty. If you have this accord, then that can be considered as beauty. And the important thing in life is to make everything possible beautiful. And the classical artistic composition, in all of its manifestations, has that function. And that's so that you actually have a fourth dimension, because part of your experience of life is simply in the lower category. But then there's a higher rank, which you get in classical artistic composition. And it's putting the daily life with all its ugliness, all its trials, and bringing it under the control of the influence of the classical artistic domain. And that's what the whole business is really all about. And therefore, if you understand that, you are part of it. And that's what you get when we do these performances. When you do a musical performance, that's what you're struggling for. You've got an audience, and all the performers are also an audience. And it's this accord which is crucial. And that's what makes life beautiful. If you don't have that, you don't have beauty. You have ugliness, which is abundant these days, especially in our elected official types. We have to improve them on this account. Well, some of them actually are in agreement with us on this matter.
Yeah, it really struck me because it gives you a sense of the political necessity of artists, that your artists have to be your most moral, most qualified leaders in society because they're responsible on stage to shape and tune the audience. And what you have today is you have this tendency for the people on the stage to want to appeal to the audience. And it's totally opposite of what you're describing. Mm-hmm. And this, I mean, it really strikes you as what the role of the artist is. It has to be the most, the highest form of thinking in your society if you're going to do that.
This was done to destroy the classical civilization, such as that which was represented by the United States in its best early period. It was the same thing. And what was the purpose of Liszt's existence? To destroy music. Mm-hmm. As Clara Schumann made it very clear in her argument with him in Paris. To destroy it. And Wagner was really everything awful. And then you got into the 20th century, and the garbage got worse. It began to stink more and more. No? Yeah. And so therefore, the moral collapse of society is related to this question. That you have in the course of history, you have periods of great beauty, expressed as beauty, which become a standard for living, a standard for speaking, a standard for thinking. And then you have periods which go into chaos, or what is like chaos. A factor of chaos is introduced. What you have, for example, in Germany, you have after World War I. You had an explosion of that produced Adolf Hitler, as opposed to what had been before, Bismarck. You had Bismarck on the one side and this crap on the other side. And that's the two sides of German existence. And so this typifies the whole problem, which is why I deal with this thing the way I do. There are two kinds of experience of this type. One is street type, and the other is the classical type. But classical means that we have developed a method of expressing ideas in a form of interaction which controls people in the sense of morality. And is by that which they make people become reconciled to themselves. Which is, take a great performance of Shakespeare, say, in a theater, as an example. Great poetry is the same thing, but take Shakespeare. If the performance is well done, the audience is taken out of the domain of direct sense experience, and they're looking into the domain of the imagination. But the domain of the imagination is the domain in which you can orchestrate beauty to appear. And what comes out is the accord, even in a great tragedy, say a Shakespeare tragedy. You get something that comes out as an accord, an expression. It is a tragic. It was an evil thing, but even if evil things have to be looked at through what eyes? You don't want to look at them through evil eyes. You want to look at them through a view which says this was wrong, and it has to be changed. So great classical artistic composition is the groundwork of morality. Without it, there is no morality. Just chaos, ugliness, killing, slaughter, everything. And that's the purpose of this thing. That's what makes it so important on this thing. This is what makes it so important for all politics. Politics must come under the rule of classical artistic composition. Otherwise, we get chaos and evil. And we demonstrated that in history so far.
I think that's an important point, because these periods you're referencing of this great blossoming of beauty as a general feature of